On that note, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Congresswoman Candice Miller. And this week, she was awarded the Harry S. Truman Award for her work on this country's National Guard, or with this country's National Guard. Two things that helped her accomplish this achievement is she placed the National Guard, and got them a seat at the table with the Joint Chief of Staffs, and her work on saving the A-10s out of Selfridge Air Force Base. And previous winners of this prestigious award have been Bob Hope, Senator Bob Dole, President Ronald Reagan, and President Bush Sr. And she is the first woman ever to receive this award, so that's quite an achievement. Let's welcome Congresswoman Candice Miller.
That was great. Thank you very much, Nita. I certainly appreciate that introduction, and I can't tell you how absolutely delighted I am to be here. Oh, there's Kevin Daly. I didn't see you when I came in. Hello, Kevin Daly, our great state representative. And I know we are joined by some others here that are good friends that I know as well. I see our prosecutor, Byron, is here, and I know our county clerk is here somewhere. Saw her a little bit earlier. Here she is. But at any rate, I know this group has had a number of distinguished guest speakers over the years, so I appreciate the gracious invitation to be here with you today. You know, I can't tell you how honored I have been to represent Lapeer County for the last 10 years. Can't believe it's already been 10 years. I tell my husband sometimes I feel like I've been in Congress for just like yesterday, you know? And then other days I feel like I've been there a very long time. So it depends. I think you can appreciate that. But, you know, our country every 10 years goes through a census. We do a national census, and then they apportion congressional seats depending on the population. And Michigan, unfortunately, had the circumstance where we actually have lost a congressional seat at one of our House seats this year. We went from, which is our current 15, down to 14, which is not a great circumstance for Michigan. But at any rate, then the state legislature does their redistricting, as we call it, the reapportionment. They draw the lines. And there were a number of the initial maps that were coming out of the state legislature that actually showed me losing representing Lapeer, which was something I wanted to avoid because I feel like in the last 10 years and even before that when I was a Michigan Secretary of State, etc., I feel an affinity with this area. I feel like I know the people quite well and understand the issues, and was really looking forward to continuing to represent you. So I was delighted when the maps came out, their final maps, and thank you, Kevin Daly. I know you got a hand in the redistricting process there. Came out of the state legislature, so fingers crossed with any luck. I'm going to try to be non-political here this morning, nonpartisan, but obviously we're right into an election season, so we'll see how things go in November, but all things, hopefully, I'll be able to continue to represent this area. It is a wonderful area, and it's groups like this, really, that make up this community and push things ahead. Just listening to Nita talk about some of the various things that you're doing here at the Chamber, and the Stone Soup Kitchen, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and the pastor knows, and those from the WUL that are here, that there's always a lot more need out there than we have resources in any community, and that's particularly so when we've just gone through a very painful economic transition in Southeast Michigan. So this is a very exciting time to be a member of Congress and involved at the federal level. It's a very historic time, I think, for our country as well. And I think an argument can be made that the election that we're about to engage in is, I certainly think, the most impactful of our entire lifetime. So the country needs to sort of decide which way we're going to go. And that will determine a number of things that I will be engaged in after the election, and the Congress will be engaged in, because we have we have got sort of a checklist of various things that are out there that need to happen in the what we call the lame duck session. I heard it categorized yesterday, actually, on a conference call with all of the members on our conference, that this could. They said, don't plan anything for Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, because we're going to be very busy, and I'm all about that, because we have to get some things done. One of the things, and here this is a business organization, you're all aware that the so-called Bush tax cuts are about to expire at the end of the year. And they include things like the marriage penalty and the child tax credit, the estate tax, etc. So I do feel pretty good about, I feel very confident that we're going to be able to get something done there and stop us from going over the so-called fiscal cliff. You hear a lot about that. I do think that during the lame duck session, the Congress is going to be able to get their act together and find common ground, and that's really what we need to do. As well, another big issue that we have hanging out there is the Farm Bill. And, we always need to remind ourselves in Michigan that agriculture actually is our second leading industry. Manufacturing, of course, very, very key, but agriculture, again, Kevin is the chairperson of the Ag Committee in the House. He does a great job on that. But we need to have a national farm bill. And this is something, excuse me, that over the years has been really a bipartisan effort. But what has happened really with the farm bill, the national farm bill, is now the farm bill is only 20% of the bill is agricultural related. And the other 80% of the bill is nutrition programs, whether that's food stamps or the SNAP program, or some of these things. So there's a lot of debate, for instance, about the food stamp program. Again, we're talking about a lot of need, but it has tripled in the last 2 years. I think anybody that's involved in that program can agree that there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in there. And so that's really sort of a lot of where the debate is focusing. And unfortunately, our farmers are getting caught up in this whole thing. And we need to make sure that we have a adequate and safe food supply and an adequate safety net for our farmers. I think you're going to see sort of a historic change on the Farm Bill, and again, I'm anticipating the Farm Bill passing before the end of the year. But something that we've always categorized as what we call it direct payments. Sometimes people talk about it as subsidies. These are really sort of going by the wayside, which is again going to be a historic change in the farming in the Farm Bill. And what will really be taking its place is crop insurance, and this is something that. Even now, I think a lot of people are saying that the federal government probably shouldn't be involved in subsidizing crop insurance, but I would argue against that. I think crop insurance is an important component for our farmers, particularly if we're going to be eliminating direct payments. All you have to do is think about, well, this drought that we just came through just this last year. So those are some very, very important things that will be happening in the lame duck before the end of the year. And we are in, right now, the 112th Congress. Every 2 years, since the beginning of our nation, we constitute another Congress. So we're finishing the 112th Congress. We'll be going into the 113th Congress in January. I sit on, so as I'm sort of giving you a Washington update here, just to give you a sense of some of the issues that I have been heavily involved in. And will continue to be. I sit on two committees, two principal committee assignments that I have. The first is transportation and infrastructure, and that's I have always said that throughout history, throughout our nation's history really, the economics has always followed the transportation grid. And that was so with the wagon trains, and then the railroads, then the interstates came, the aviation links now. We always have to make sure that we are investing in our roads and in our bridges and infrastructure in order to be economically competitive. So we just passed, the Congress passed, a bill that came out of our committee, a 2-year reauthorization of the nation's transportation reauthorization bill. And a lot of good things in there. We did a lot of streamlining for some of the various agencies within the federal highways. We did a lot of consolidating and streamlining of the regulatory process. Anybody that's involved in the construction industry, or even if you just drive your car around, you sometimes wonder why it seems to take 2 years to build a project that seems like it could be done in a much more expedited fashion. And so we have really tried to streamline that and give the states a lot more flexibility. And again, I know Representative Daley hears this all the time. Excuse me, and is a big proponent of making sure that the states do have more flexibility with the amount of money that they're getting from the feds for the various road projects. And Michigan has always been a donor state. You've all heard that term. And when I first came to Congress, I think it was 84 cents for every dollar that we sent, that we got back, which was not a good position to be in. And now with this last bill, we're at 96 cents. So not perfect yet, but a huge step forward, and that will mean literally hundreds of millions of additional dollars to Michigan. So very, very important thing. And my principal committee assignment really is Homeland Security. That is the committee that, you always sort of have your principal committee assignment. This is the one that I am very, very focused on, and I am very proud this Congress to be a chairperson of a subcommittee there on borders and maritime. And the Homeland Security is particularly interesting to me, and I think very important, not just to my district, but to the nation. I always remind myself that with all the challenges that our nation faces, that the first and foremost responsibility of the federal government is to provide for the common defense. That is actually in the Constitution of our nation, in the preamble. And all these other issues, and believe me, I'm not minimizing them, they're very important. But making sure that we provide for national defense, national security, homeland security really is the most important job, I think, that we have. And so our committee has been focused on all sorts of various things. The whole Homeland Security Department was sort of cobbled together after 9/11. And in our committee hearing room, we have some very large posters of the towers, and makes you think every time you're having a hearing and testimony, etc., what we're trying to do and various things that we are engaged in the committee. A lot that you don't hear about all the time. Might not be the most interesting thing that's currently got the media's attention, but it is very impactful, in my mind, to keeping our citizens safe. And the committee that I'm chairing, I think is I think a very good fit for our district, because borders and maritime, first of all, the borders, we have jurisdiction over Customs and Border Protection, the CBP, the ICE, Department of ICE, the Coast Guard. Of course, we have a huge Coast Guard present in the Great Lakes Basin here. And Michigan is a border community, a border state. And I know we often think about everything that's going on in the southern border, and we see everything on the news about, illegal aliens coming across the southern border and various things. But we have some very unique challenges and unique dynamics right here on the northern border as well that need to be addressed. And we can think of the Ambassador Bridge, which is the first busiest port of entry border crossing on the northern tier of the nation. The Blue Water Bridge is the second busiest border crossing. The Windsor Tunnel, the Canadian National Rail Tunnel that comes under the St. Clair River, is the busiest rail entry into our nation. And we have significantly ratcheted up the amount of CBP personnel, Border Patrol personnel at these various ports of entry, at the bridges, at the tunnels. We actually have stood up what we call the Great Lakes branch of the Northern Border Wing at Selfridge Air National Guard Base, which again is several hundred more personnel for CBP. And it goes through the entire basin and the entire region here. We have some air assets there, both fixed wings and rotor, water assets for the very long liquid border that we share with our wonderful neighbors and allies, the Canadians. And we also have opened up there something we call an Operational Integration Center, which is the first of its type in the nation, not just on the northern border, but in the nation, which is a state-of-the-art, very high-tech, with the ability to analyze data from the various stakeholders that feed it, from the federal level, the state level, the county level, local level. Excuse me, I'm getting over the cold that I think everybody else has had here, so I still have a little bit of a cough here. But at any rate, this gives us the ability to analyze data, and we end up with a product that can be placed in the hands of the brave men and women that are out on our border, securing our border. So several of my bills that have actually passed the House, and we hope to have action in the Senate. First of all, would call for operational control within the next several years of all of our borders, which is something that every sovereign nation should do. And I often say, with all the amount of time that we're spending in theater, worrying about the borders between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we are having our own difficulty controlling our own borders right here domestically. And it's very important that we do so. A bill that I have had for operational control of the border just recently passed the House. Another bill that we worked on, something I call the Smart Port Act, is looking at the how we scan and the matrix for making sure that Thank you, Nita, you were dear.
You're very welcome.
Just take a sip of this. Is looking at the global supply chain and all of the container ships that come into our ports. And so, you know, we are constantly alert, right? Ever vigilant. And it was interesting, you just saw this a bomber in New York City that was nabbed by the FBI. And it's, look, I'm not an alarmist, but I'm a realist. And they're out there, and they hate our freedoms. They hate our way of life. I mean, this guy wanted to bomb one of the Federal Reserve Bank. Just in wonderful, wonderful work by the FBI and local police and Police Commissioner Kelly, who I know well from New York City. They have their own terror team there, if you get me. But you know, we think it can only happen in New York, but it can happen in other places. And again, so that's why some of the work that we're doing on the Homeland Security Committee, as I say, I think is very impactful and very, very important. And one other issue, sort of shifting gears here, and I know you all got to get to work this morning, so I don't want to go on too long here this morning. But I do want to talk about, when you think about national security, one of the most important issues, I believe, for our national security, short term and in the long term, is actually energy security and energy independence. It really is. Let's face it, a lot of what is going on in the Middle East would be much less interesting to us if we were not so dependent on foreign oil, on foreign sources of oil. It's just the truth. We have got to get off of this. We have got to get off of the reliance of that and the ability for you know, them shutting down the whether it's the Gulf of Aden or what have you, the various supply chains for our energy sources. We have got to get off of that. And I think it is crazy that we are about the only nation in the entire planet that does not advantage itself of our own natural resources, of which they are plentiful. And believe me, I am an environmentalist. I really am. I bet there isn't any person in this room who doesn't think you're an environmentalist. But we can explore for energy and get the kind of energy resources that we need in our country in an environmentally safe way. We should be drilling in the Anwar. I've been to the Anwar in Alaska. First of all, let me tell you, in Alaska, if you did a poll in Alaska, it's in the 70, almost 80% of the people of Alaska want us to drill in Alaska. So it's not like we're going to go invade Alaska and start taking the oil. They want that. They want us to do that. And we can do it. The way that they drill now, you know, they build these ice roads during the bad months. And they site the drill rigs, which are on a very small footprint. It's not like the old movies you used to see with John Wayne, you know, with these oil derricks, etc. And then when the ice melts in the summer months, there's no scarring to the tundra or any sign that anything ever even happened there. So I'm just using it not to get in the weeds about this, but we can do what we need to do to advantage ourselves. We should be having more oil and natural gas production everywhere. We've had some huge finds of natural gas right in the Midwest, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, even in Michigan, plenty of natural gas. And I'll tell you, if you go to any European city, many of the vehicles are running their cars on natural gas. And that, I'm just going to make a little prediction here. I think that is where you are really going to, I appreciate all the electric vehicles, etc. I don't think that's going to be the thing. What's going to happen here is natural gas vehicles. They now got these little things about the size of this that you put in your garage. So you bring your natural gas vehicle in and you just plug it in at night. Many of you have already heated your homes by natural gas. And you can imagine what that would do to the price of the world's oil. If the biggest, you know, gorilla on the planet that consumes all of it start going to natural gas for our vehicles. And this can happen. It's not that difficult. The engineering technology is there. Well, here's a timekeeper, 3 minutes left. Okay, let me just quickly, energy. A lot of other things that we should be doing. The reason that these lights are on is because of coal. We are burning coal in Michigan. We are a huge coal state, even though we don't mine coal here. We get our coal, most of the coal comes from the western states. But almost 70, really, I think 65 to 67% of all of the electricity that we generate in Michigan comes from coal. The United States of America is the Saudi Arabia of coal. We can burn coal cleanly. The technology is available to do so. We should be doing more with the oil shales out in the West. You go to North Dakota, they actually have a negative unemployment rate there. It's a boom. You can't believe it. I talked to other members of Congress from that area. You cannot believe what is going on there because of the oil shale that's happening there. It's like a big rush, you know, like used to happen, right? The oil rush back in the early part of the century. So we have plenty of available resources right here in the United States of America, and we should be advantaging ourselves of them, as well as alternatives, of course. Alternatives are very important. Last week I was up in Huron County, the tip of the thumb in my district, with DTE. Excuse me. DTE Energy is, we just did a ribbon cutting on one of their wind farms. They have 69 turbines in this particular wind farm. There's going to be several hundred new wind turbines up in the thumb area. That's $500 million by DTE investment into the thumb area. ITC is building what they call the thumb transmission grid, which is another $500 million right in this immediate area. And these are all local jobs, all local jobs. And that is, of course, being built to move the energy that is happening up there. So there's just a lot of opportunity, I think, for us, for the United States, to very quickly move off of oil, and I think it is so important that we do that. We should be permitting the Keystone Pipeline. I mean, I could go on and on here, but I'm really onto this energy thing because I think it is so critically important for us long term. So I will close. I know you're about to tell me to give me the hook here, but let me just tell you again how sincerely honored and privileged I am to represent you in the United States Congress, and I mean that with all sincerity. I know you all take your jobs very seriously, and I take my job very seriously. And I like to do events like this, or various kinds of forums, so that I can have input and suggestions from the people that I represent. Otherwise, when you're in the People's House, that's what they call the U.S. House of Representatives, they often call it the People's House, which is true because you're supposed to represent the people that elected you there, and you can't do a good job of doing that unless you come out and speak to the people that you represent, not in a bubble in Washington all the time. But not only representing you, but as was mentioned, this is my final thing, about Selfridge Air National Guard Base. This Harry S. Truman Award that I just got 2 days ago is probably the nicest thing that's happened to me since I've been in the United States Congress, from the National Guard Association of America. Because, you know, you can remember at the beginning of our country, 1775, when you had Paul Revere riding through the Massachusetts countryside, announcing that the British were coming, and the citizens rose up, right? The Minutemen, which is the symbol of the National Guard, rose up and fired those first shots of liberty for America, for a new country, this experiment, this wonderful experiment called America. And so the National Guard has been the tip of the spear in every conflict since then. But I have a young intern that's interning with me right now. It's from Yale, over in St. Clair County. His name's Josh. I met Josh when he was in Walter Reed. He was with the 82nd Airborne out in 2005, November 2005, out on a night mission. And IED took his leg. And now he's come home, taking a GI Bill, going to have Byron's going to have a degree in criminal justice. So we're very, very, but I tell you what, I look at a guy like Josh, and every day when I go to vote, and I see that Capitol dome, and I see the statue of the Lady Freedom up there, I think about a guy like that, and why I am there, and the people that I represent. And you can't all be there to vote on every issue, and I recognize that I am your voice in the United States House of Representatives, and I appreciate it sincerely, the opportunity to be your voice, and again, try to do my best to represent the majority of the people that I have in my district. So thank you all so very, very much, again, for your gracious hospitality. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Candice.
Sit down and do Q&A. Thank you.